"Ma'am, the cleaning staff isn't supposed to touch the board." The voice cut through the silence of the empty lecture hall like a blade. Gloria Bennett's hand froze mid-stroke, the chalk still pressed against the blackboard. She didn't turn around immediately. She couldn't. Not yet. Not when she was this close to finishing what had consumed her mind for the past 3 hours. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from." "Just one more line," Gloria whispered, her voice barely audible over the scratch of chalk against slate. Her hand moved with precision, completing the final sequence of the proof. The equation sprawled across the board like a mathematical symphony. 15 feet of numbers, symbols, and logic that had haunted the department for months. Professor David Whitmore stepped closer, his loafers clicking against the polished floor. He was young, maybe 32, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove you belonged somewhere. His eyes narrowed as he studied the board, then the woman in the janitorial uniform standing before it, chalk dust covering her dark hands. "Did you just... What are you doing?" His voice shifted from irritation to confusion. Gloria finally turned to face him. At 49, she carried her years like stones in her pockets, visible in the lines around her eyes, the gray threading through her hair pulled back in a simple bun, the weariness that settled into her bones from decades of night shifts. But in this moment, her eyes burned with something else entirely. Something fierce and undeniable. "I solved it," she said simply. Whitmore blinked. "You? I'm sorry, what?" "The Blackwell optimization problem. The one the department's been working on since August." Gloria gestured to the board with the chalk still clutched in her fingers. "It's been sitting here for weeks. I solved it." The professor's face cycled through disbelief, condescension, and something that might have been anger. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that's a graduate-level research problem. It requires years of specialized training in variational calculus, nonlinear optimization, and constraint theory." "I know." Gloria's voice was steady, but her heart hammered against her ribs. 25 years. 25 years since she'd spoken these words, since she'd felt the rush of mathematical certainty flowing through her veins like oxygen. Whitmore opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the board again, really looked this time. His eyes traced the lines of her proof, and slowly, so slowly, his expression began to change. If stories like Gloria's touch your soul, if you believe in hidden brilliance and the power of perseverance, hit that subscribe button. Because here at True Black Struggle, we tell the stories that history tried to erase. Stories of black excellence that refuse to stay invisible. Subscribe now, and join us in celebrating the genius that the world overlooked. Gloria set the chalk down on the metal tray beneath the board. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline draining away and leaving behind the familiar weight of exhaustion. She picked up her spray bottle and rag from where she'd set them on a nearby desk, preparing to move on to the next classroom. This was a mistake. She should have just erased the board and kept moving like she always did. "Wait." Whitmore's voice stopped her at the door. Don't leave yet. I need to call someone." "Professor, I have 6 more classrooms to clean before my shift ends at." "Please." He pulled out his cell phone, his fingers already dialing. "Just give me 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes stretched into 20, then 30. Gloria sat in the front row of the lecture hall, her cleaning cart parked in the corner, watching as more people arrived. First came Dr. Patricia Chen, the vice chair of the mathematics department, her silver hair disheveled as if she'd just rolled out of bed. Then Dr. Raymond Foster, whose groundbreaking work on optimization theory had earned him national recognition. Finally, Dean Margaret Holloway herself, wrapped in a wool coat despite the November chill having barely set in. They huddled around the blackboard like pilgrims at a shrine, their voices rising and falling in academic jargon that Gloria understood perfectly but pretended not to hear. She studied her hands instead, hands that smelled of bleach and floor polish, hands that had scrubbed toilets and emptied trash cans for more than 2 decades. Hands that had just written a mathematical proof none of these brilliant minds had been able to complete. Dr. Chen approached her first, a printout of the original problem clutched in her hand. The older woman's eyes were sharp, assessing. "Mrs. Bennett. Gloria Bennett." Mrs. Bennett, can you walk me through your solution? Specifically, how you approached the constraint optimization in the third section. Gloria glanced at the dean, then back at Dr. Chen. Ma'am, I should really finish my shift. Please. Dr. Foster joined them, his face a mixture of skepticism and genuine curiosity. We've been stuck on this problem for 4 months. 4 months of the brightest minds in this department throwing everything we have at it. If you actually solved it. He trailed off as if unable to complete the thought. Something inside Gloria cracked. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way they looked at her. Not quite believing, not quite dismissing. Or maybe it was simply that she was tired of being invisible in a place where she'd once dreamed of belonging. You were approaching it wrong, she said quietly. You were treating it as a convex optimization problem, trying to apply gradient descent methods. But it's not convex. The feasible region has a non-standard topology. You needed to reformulate it using duality theory first, then apply a modified Lagrangian approach with carefully selected penalty parameters. The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Chen sank into a nearby chair. My God, how do you know this? Dean Holloway's voice was sharp. Where did you study? The question Gloria had been dreading. She took a breath, and suddenly she was 18 again, standing in her mother's hospital room, watching the monitors beep their steady rhythm while her dreams slipped away like sand through her fingers. 31 years earlier. Dorchester, Massachusetts. Gloria Washington, before she became Gloria Bennett, sat cross-legged on her twin bed, textbooks spread around her like offerings. The acceptance letter from MIT lay on her nightstand, already worn from being read and reread until she could recite it from memory. Full scholarship. Applied mathematics program. The words had felt like magic when she first read them. Glory. Her mother's voice drifted through the thin walls of their apartment. Baby, can you come here? She found her mother in the kitchen, one hand pressed against her chest, the other gripping the counter for support. Denise Washington's face had gone gray, her breathing shallow and labored. Mama. Gloria rushed forward, catching her mother before she collapsed. Marcus. Call 911. Her younger brother appeared in the doorway, all gangly teenage limbs and terror. What's wrong with her? Just call. The diagnosis came 3 days later. Advanced heart disease, complicated by years of untreated hypertension. The doctors said she needed surgery. Expensive surgery that their insurance barely covered. Even with coverage, there would be thousands in additional costs. Medication. Follow-up care. Someone to help her during recovery. Gloria sat in the hospital cafeteria with the financial aid office's number written on a napkin. She'd called twice already, asking about deferring her enrollment. They'd been kind but clear. The scholarship was for that year. If she didn't accept it now, it would go to someone else. Her father had died when she was 12, a construction accident that left them with barely enough insurance money to cover the funeral. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to keep them fed, to keep them in school, to give them chances she'd never had. And now Gloria was supposed to leave? Go off to MIT while her mother recovered alone? While Marcus, just 16, dropped out to work full-time. While her baby sister, Keisha, only 13, learned to cook dinner because there was no one else. She never made that call to MIT. Instead, she enrolled at Bunker Hill Community College, taking night classes while working 2-day jobs. One at a grocery store, one cleaning offices downtown. She told herself it was temporary. She'd save money, get her mother stable, then reapply to MIT. Maybe in a year. Maybe 2. But a year became 2. 2 became 5. Her mother's health deteriorated, requiring more care, more medication. Marcus got arrested for a stupid mistake, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Gloria spent her savings on a lawyer to keep him out of prison. Keisha got pregnant at 17, and suddenly there was a baby to help support. The mathematics degree she dreamed of faded like a photograph left in the sun. She finished her associate's degree at 23, taking 7 years for a 2-year program. It was something. It had to be enough. Then she met Robert Bennett at a church social. He was kind, steady, a postal worker with reliable hours and a gentle smile. They married when she was 25. For a while, life felt almost stable. They talked about her going back to school someday. Someday. Robert died when she was 38, a drunk driver running a red light on his route home. The lawsuit took years and left her with just enough to bury him and keep the lights on for a few months. The post office job was gone. Her mother had passed 2 years earlier. Marcus was in California, trying to build a life. Keisha had 3 kids now and was struggling herself. Gloria needed work. Steady work. The kind that didn't ask questions about gaps in your resume or why a woman with your test scores was applying for a cleaning position. Rutherford University was hiring night janitors. The pay was decent. The benefits were better. She could work midnight to 8 a.m., be home before noon, and no one would bother her. She'd been there for 11 years now. 11 years of walking past classrooms where young people younger than she'd been when she'd let her dream die, learned the mathematics she'd once loved. 11 years of seeing equations on blackboards and feeling that old familiar hunger rise up in her chest. She never touched the boards. Not until tonight. I started at Bunker Hill Community College, Gloria heard herself saying. The lecture hall felt too warm, too bright. Got my associate's degree in mathematics. That was a long time ago. Bunker Hill. Dr. Foster's voice was measured. And you're working as a janitor? Yes, sir. For how long? 11 years here. Other places before that. Dean Holloway stepped forward. Her expression unreadable. Mrs. Bennett, I'm trying to understand something. You have formal mathematical training, clearly at a level far beyond an associate's degree. I taught myself. The words came out harder than Gloria intended. Books. Online courses when I could afford the internet. There's a library 3 blocks from my apartment. I read. I study. I may clean toilets for a living, Dean Holloway, but I never stopped learning. The dean blinked, and for a moment, something like shame flickered across her face. Dr. Chen stood up, approaching the blackboard again. She picked up a piece of chalk and wrote out a new problem, a variation on the one Gloria had solved, but with different parameters. Could you solve this one? Gloria felt every eye in the room on her. This was a test. Of course it was a test. Because a black woman in a janitor's uniform claiming to understand advanced mathematics, that required proof. That required her to perform on command, to justify her existence in their space. She could walk away. Should walk away. Her shift supervisor would be making rounds soon, and if she wasn't at least halfway through her assigned buildings, there would be questions. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not at her age. Not with her history. But the problem on the board was beautiful. Elegant. It sang to her in a language she'd been forced to whisper for so long. Gloria stood up and walked to the board. She solved it in 12 minutes. When she turned around, Dr. Chen was crying. Not sobbing. Just tears streaming silently down her face as she nodded. It's right. Every step. Not just right, it's brilliant. The simplification in the 5th line, I've never seen anyone approach it that way, but it's so much more efficient. We need to talk about this, Dean Holloway said. All of us. Mrs. Bennett, I know it's late, and I know you have work to complete, but I can't lose this job. Gloria's voice cracked. Dean, I appreciate what you're trying to do, I do, but I can't miss my shift. I have rent due next week, and my car needs new tires, and... What if you didn't have to? Dr. Foster interrupted. What if we offered you something else? Gloria laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off the classroom walls. Offered me what? I'm almost 50 years old with an associate's degree from a community college. I don't have the credentials to teach here, and I can't afford to go back to school full-time, and even if I could. A research position. Dr. Chen's voice was firm. Working with me directly. We have grants that can pay a salary comparable to what you're making now, but with room for growth. We can also arrange for you to complete your bachelor's degree. Tuition waived, of course. If you're interested in eventually pursuing graduate work, we can discuss that too. The room tilted. Gloria gripped the edge of the nearest desk. "You're not serious." "We're entirely serious," Dean Holloway said. "Mrs. Bennett, what you've done tonight is extraordinary. Not just the mathematical work, though that alone is remarkable, but the fact that you've maintained this level of skill and knowledge despite every obstacle in your path. That's not just intelligence. That's dedication we rarely see even in our top students." "I'm a janitor," Gloria whispered. "I clean your toilets." "You're a mathematician," Dr. Chen corrected gently. "You've been a mathematician all along. We just didn't see you." They talked until dawn. Gloria called her shift supervisor, her hands shaking, and explained she needed to leave early, a family emergency. It wasn't entirely a lie. Something in her was being reborn, and that felt as urgent as any crisis. The department heads wanted her to start immediately, but Gloria asked for 2 weeks. She needed to give proper notice to the janitorial company, needed to ensure her replacement would be properly trained. Impossible opportunity unfolding before her, she couldn't bring herself to leave people in the lurch. It wasn't how she was raised. Dr. Chun walked her to her car as the sun rose over the campus, painting the old brick buildings in shades of amber and gold. The professor was quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Why tonight? You've been cleaning these halls for 11 years. Why did you decide to solve that problem tonight?" Gloria unlocked her car, a 2003 Honda Accord with a cracked windshield and a temperamental heater, and stood with her hand on the door. "Because I'm tired," she said finally. "I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of watching other people do the work I was born to do. And I'm tired of being afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That I waited too long. That I missed my chance. That I'm too old, too poor, too black, too much of a cleaning lady for anyone to take seriously." Gloria met Dr. Chen's eyes. "Tonight, I decided I'd rather be seen and rejected than invisible forever. At least then I'd know I tried." Dr. Chen reached out and squeezed her shoulder. "Well, Mrs. Bennett, you've definitely been seen. And I promise you we're not letting you go." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Gloria trained her replacement, a young Haitian woman named Marie who listened carefully to Gloria's instructions about which professors liked their boards erased completely and which preferred their work left up. She cleaned out her locker, said goodbye to colleagues who'd become friends over 11 years of shared night shifts. Some were happy for her. Others were confused. A few seemed angry, as if her sudden elevation was somehow a betrayal. Marcus called from California when he heard the news. "Glory, that's amazing. I always knew you were too smart for that job." "It's not about being too smart for anything," Gloria said quietly. "Every job has dignity. It's just, now I get to use a different part of myself." Keisha cried. "Mama would be so proud. Mama would say I should have done this 20 years ago. Mama would understand why you couldn't." Gloria's first day as a research assistant in the mathematics department felt like stepping into an alternate universe. They'd given her an office. Small, yes. Windowless, yes. But an office with her name on a placard beside the door. Gloria Bennett, research associate. She stood in the doorway for a full minute, reading and rereading those words until they felt real. Dr. Chen had cleared out space on her grant for Gloria to work on several ongoing projects, but the main focus would be the optimization problem Gloria had solved. The solution opened up new avenues of research that could have applications in everything from supply chain logistics to machine learning algorithms. "Your proof was elegant," Dr. Chen explained during their first official meeting. "But more importantly, the method you developed, this reformulation approach, it could potentially be applied to an entire class of problems we've been struggling with. If we can formalize it, publish it, this could be significant." "Publish." Gloria's voice came out as a squeak. "As in academic journals?" "That's generally how we share research, yes." Dr. Chen smiled. "I know this is overwhelming. We'll take it one step at a time. But Gloria, you need to understand. You didn't just solve a problem. You may have developed a new technique. That's the kind of work that earns doctorates." The word hung in the air between them. Doctorate. Dr. Gloria Bennett. It felt like a fantasy from another life. But the work was real. Painfully, beautifully real. Gloria threw herself into it with the hunger of someone who'd been starved for decades. She worked with Dr. Chen to formalize her solution, to prove it worked not just for that specific problem but for a broader class of optimization challenges. They wrote. They tested. They argued over notation and phrasing late into the night. The other professors came around slowly. Some, like Dr. Foster, were genuinely excited by her work and treated her as a colleague from day one. Others were more skeptical, watching her with suspicious eyes, waiting for her to prove she belonged. A few made comments, casual, almost friendly, but with edges sharp enough to draw blood. So interesting that you found your way here through custodial work. Must be quite a change, working with your mind instead of your hands. Do you find the mathematics difficult to follow without the formal training? Gloria smiled through it all, her mother's voice echoing in her head. Don't give them the satisfaction, baby. Do the work. Be excellent. Let your results speak louder than their doubts. Her enrollment in the bachelor's degree program started that spring. She took classes alongside students young enough to be her children, sitting in the back of lecture halls and taking notes with the same intensity she'd brought to her night shifts. Some students were curious about her, this older black woman in their advanced calculus course. Others ignored her completely. She didn't care. She'd been ignored before. What mattered was the mathematics, the pure crystalline logic of proofs, the satisfaction of solving problems that had seemed impossible. The way her mind came alive in ways it hadn't since she was 18 years old and full of dreams. The paper came out in October, a year after that night in the lecture hall. A novel reformulation approach to non-convex optimization problems by Dr. Patricia Chen and Gloria Bennett. Seeing her name in print, her name attached to actual mathematical research, felt like vindication and grief all tangled together. At the publication celebration, Dean Holloway raised a glass and said, "To Gloria Bennett, who reminds us that brilliance can bloom anywhere if only we have eyes to see it." Later that night, Gloria stood in the empty lecture hall where it had all begun. Someone had left the lights on. The blackboard was covered in new problems, new challenges for new students. She picked up a piece of chalk, feeling its familiar weight in her hand. For 25 years, she'd been invisible. For 25 years, she'd mopped these floors and emptied these trash cans and told herself it was enough. That survival was enough. That keeping her head down and her bills paid was all she could ask for. But standing here now, in this space where she'd finally allowed herself to be seen, truly seen, Gloria understood something fundamental. Dreams don't die. They hibernate. They wait in the dark places of your heart, patient and persistent, until the moment you're brave enough to let them breathe again. She thought about all the Gloria Bennetts out there. All the brilliant minds working checkout counters and cleaning office buildings and driving buses. All the people whose genius went unrecognized because the world looked at their circumstances and never bothered to look deeper. All the dreams deferred, delayed, buried under the weight of bills and responsibility and simple survival. They can't all wait 25 years, she whispered to the empty room. They shouldn't have to. That's when the idea formed. If she could do this, if a 49-year-old black woman with an associate's degree and a janitorial uniform could find her way back to her passion, then others could too. They just needed someone to see them, to believe in them, to hold the door open long enough for them to walk through. The next week, Gloria approached Dean Holloway with a proposal, a scholarship program for non-traditional students, people working service jobs on campus who wanted to pursue education. Not charity, opportunity. A chance for janitors and cafeteria workers and maintenance staff to take classes, earn degrees, develop their talents. She wanted to call it the Second Bloom Scholarship, because it's never too late for brilliance to flower. Dean Holloway listened, nodded, and said, "Let me see what I can do." 3 years later, Dr. Gloria Bennett, she'd finished her bachelor's in record time and was now halfway through her PhD, stood at the front of a lecture hall teaching Introduction to Optimization Theory. The class was packed with undergraduates, their faces reflecting the diversity the mathematics department was finally beginning to embrace. In the back row sat 3 Second Bloom scholars, a cafeteria worker studying computer science, a maintenance technician pursuing mechanical engineering, and a parking attendant working toward his biology degree. They made eye contact, and Gloria nodded. They nodded back. An understanding between people who knew what it meant to be overlooked, to be dismissed, to be considered invisible. After class, a young black girl approached her desk. Maybe 19, with box braids and uncertain eyes. "Dr. Bennett? Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Is it true that you used to be a janitor here?" Gloria set down the papers she'd been gathering. "Yes. For 11 years. And you just started over? At your age?" "I didn't start over," Gloria corrected gently. "I continued. There's a difference. I never stopped being a mathematician, even when I was cleaning toilets. I just finally had the chance to do it openly." The girl bit her lip. "I'm on financial aid. I work 2 jobs. Sometimes I'm so tired I can barely keep my eyes open in class, and I see these other students. They don't have to work, their parents pay for everything, and I feel like I'm so far behind. Like maybe I don't belong here." Gloria came around the desk and looked the girl straight in the eye. "Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me when I was your age. The path doesn't matter. Straight or crooked, fast or slow. If you're moving forward, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You belong here just as much as anyone else. More maybe because you're fighting twice as hard for it." Tears welled in the girl's eyes. "Thank you." After she left, Gloria gathered her things and walked through the campus. She passed the building where she used to start her night shift, where she'd park her cart and begin the long process of cleaning classrooms and offices. She could still smell the industrial cleaners, still feel the weight of the mop in her hands. She didn't regret those years. Not anymore. They'd taught her things that mathematics never could: resilience, humility, the dignity of hard work. They'd stripped away her ego and left behind something stronger, a core of self-knowledge that no degree could provide. But she was grateful, so grateful it sometimes made her chest ache, that those years weren't her ending. That she'd had the courage to pick up that chalk. That she'd had the audacity to be seen. That night, Gloria drove home to the same apartment she'd lived in for 12 years. It wasn't much bigger, though she could afford better now. But it was hers, and it was filled with books. Mathematics texts, journals, papers she was reviewing. The walls were covered with equations she was working through. Problems that fascinated her, ideas that kept her up at night in the best possible way. She made tea and settled at her small kitchen table with her laptop, working on a new paper about optimization algorithms. Outside her window, the city hummed its evening song. Cars passing, neighbors talking, the distant wail of sirens. The sounds of life continuing, persistent, resilient. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chen made a breakthrough on the logistics problem. "Call me when you can. This is your technique at work again." Beautiful. Gloria smiled and picked up her phone, but before calling, she opened her notes app and wrote something she'd been thinking about all day. "I may have worn that uniform for years, walked those halls in the shadows, been invisible to those who decided whose brilliance mattered. But the mind beneath it never stopped shining. Dreams don't die, they just wait for the moment when courage meets opportunity. And when that moment comes, when you finally allow yourself to be seen, you discover something profound. You were never invisible. They were simply blind." She sent the quote to the girl from her class, then called Dr. Chen to talk about mathematics. Outside, the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, each one burning bright, regardless of who was watching, regardless of who believed they belonged there. Just like Gloria, shining now as she always had been, finally, blessedly seen. This is what resilience looks like. Not the dramatic Hollywood version where everything changes overnight, but the quiet, persistent kind, the kind that cleans toilets and studies textbooks by streetlight, the kind that refuses to forget who you are, even when the world insists you're nobody, the kind that waits 25 years for a chance and then seizes it with both hands when it finally comes. Gloria Bennett's story is not about being discovered. It's about refusing to stay hidden, about knowing your worth even when no one else does, about the mathematics of hope, The equation that says intelligence plus opportunity plus courage equals transformation. And that's a formula that works every single time, no matter how long it takes to solve. Remember her name. Dr. Gloria Bennett. Janitor turned mathematician. Invisible no more. And know this, if you've been overlooked, dismissed, told you don't belong, keep shining anyway. Keep solving the problems only you can see. Keep believing in the brilliance the world hasn't recognized yet. Because somewhere, someone is watching. And when the moment comes, when you finally step into the light you've been creating all along, they'll see what was always there. A mind that never stopped shining, just waiting for the world to catch up. Your time is coming. Keep the chalk ready.